Okay. Any questions, comments from? Okay, there's a couple there. So.
I just wanted to ask a question about, we talked in your talk there about the athletics, like that professionals becoming like athletes. And Jane, you were talking about this as well, the whole idea of competition.
Oh, yeah.
But and a lot of those self-tracking things are, you opt in to be public, and therefore that sets up the kind of competitive arena. But I'm curious about, is it competition that's potentially dangerous, or is it the comparative nature of people comparing themselves to each other? Like, so maybe you could speak to that.
Well, I just say one thing about the link between sort of the competitive or elite athlete and the workplace. And if there's one construct that's quite valuable and being really used, is the idea of mindset and performance. And I've noticed that overlap, and I've given talks in both of those arenas and see the constructs are really useful across sectors. And that's less threatening than the competitive. So that's to do with a positive mindset, a growth mindset. I mean, in the end of the day, let's face it, your employer wants to bleed you dry to make as much money as possible. And if they're in the, that's it, And once you kind of accept that, and then within that, they set up structures, especially in the private sector. We know how that's how it works, So they set up private structures. So, and that's a very cynical view, but they're trying to get maximum performance out of you, and they are trying to manipulate you, they are. So they'll do it a whole lot of different ways. So I gave a talk to Pfizer Pharmaceutical recently about mindset, and I was told, could you do the title mindset and peak performance? People like that. Performance, no, peak performance. So
performance, yeah.
They set up the rep of the year, they set up, that's what they do. So they try to get the most out of you. So as a psychologist then, the question is, well, what are the strategies that are most effective to get maximal performance? And that's where you're into what ones could cause harm. So I don't work so much in the occupational sector, but I observe sort of from behaviour change and the opt-out and engagement, what are the things that put people off, what are the things that attract them. And one thing that's quite evident is that there are quite individual differences. So a lot of the work we're doing now is towards personalisation of the intervention. That's the word we use, That translates from health to your doctor saying, if you don't stop drinking pints, you'll die. They've given you the information. Why have you done nothing about it? So what are the steps in between? And that's where the psychologist space is. What are the things that will cause harm? That's another sort of question. So I think in the workplace you would probably talk more about that then.
I don't know what the difference between competition and comparing myself to someone else is.
Yeah.
It depends. I mean, do I do that in a friendly way?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard for me to say. In terms of, I can talk about the company that I just presented some of the findings. And interestingly, some of the participants wanted more gamification, and they quite liked that idea. But then others were saying to me, well, look, it isn't that fair, because we know that guy trains for marathons. So, and they also they could see each other's dashboards. They did it in quite a collective way, in fact. And the Dutch are very progressive in some things in this type of area. Actually, I found through different research with other universities as well. So I think there was a desire for it, but then a sense that in fact we're really not going into this with a sort of, as I said in the talk, level playing field. This is something that makes it interesting, but what's the point sort of question. But yeah, so I think those who wanted it to be fun and competitive in a positive way, they were doing it anyway. So yeah.
And I suppose just one other thing, and it's an area that we're only in the L-plate stages of research, and when I see the insight guys here, like the ideal is to combine the user feedback as part of personalisation. There's a couple of steps you take in developing solutions. So early on, you'd ascertain from the person what benefits, barriers, and what behaviour change strategies are their preferences. So you have that. But also, I mean, what I'm particularly interested in is the subconscious things. So if you're collecting a lot of data, so we tend to collect a lot of baseline data, and in a way you can create a predictive model of the person's preferences that so you combine in a way what they say with what they're actually doing, and you can then use these data streams to personalise their particular productivity environment. And if you can do that within a team or group setting, great, although it could be at odds with the nature of a team. So that's complicated in the workplace, but we're kind of lucky in academia, that we can kind of do our own find our own little way of doing things. But using data to track and personalise as well as the user input to form the optimum solution is kind of the ideal scenario.
I just maybe abuse my privilege here as chair of this to ask, are there any predictive factors for like personality types in terms of who will find these most useful? So just from my own experience, you know, there's some principles of behavior change that committing to something publicly in a costly manner can be motivating, and yet I've tried to adhere to this principle in my life, and I find it has the exact opposite effect on me. So whenever I declare a goal publicly, I'm demotivated, I'm less likely to achieve it. So what's wrong with me?
Maybe we should take this outside.
Actually, I suppose like, what I was wondering more specifically, like, you know, models like the 5-factor personality, those models, do they predict who will be the most likely user of these kinds of
So it's
technologies?
it's a very good question. I see Cormac there who's doing really interesting work on the impact of social media on health and well-being and things. You know, those are crude measures really, if I'm honest. And the personality measures have got very useful correlate information for various things. But we've kind of moved on past that now to looking at what we would call, well, the behaviour change taxonomy is a new development in social science. And there's 93 what we call behaviour change strategies. Now they're increasing all the time. And these are like the smallest active ingredients you can insert into a behaviour change program, and they can be personalised for you. So you have your own particular mix of things that would work. You're not quite sure what they are, and this would be, you know, what we would try to do. But you select, and it depends on the circumstance, the person, so a little bit of them, the behaviour, the duration, whether it's a frequent behaviour or an infrequent behaviour. So there isn't a straightforward answer, but personality predictor is a crude and probably lesser used measure. We're probably more predictably manipulated than we realise, but we can personalise the behaviour change strategies. So it's like what you put in a pill to remove a headache. We put a behaviour change strategy as the active ingredient into an intervention. And
Nudge.
Yeah.
It is but that's the idea.
Nudge.
Yeah.
Nudge-ish.
So that's where the science is now, and that's really only in the last 3-4 years, and it's a very good place for the science to be.
Yeah, just one comment is that Karen Young from King's College London has written a paper called Hyper Nudging. So she thinks that this is a nudging on steroids because it's because the way in which it's personalised and it's flexible and dynamic and adaptive, that it's a new manifestation of the nudge philosophy. So
Boyega.
From Insight.
Yes.
So my question is related to quantification in the area of, for example, smart environment, smart cities, which, I mean, really has been also there for a long time. And one of the difficult problems is that for most of the experiments carried out, you don't really see that change. All right, so it's almost like, people will accept, people will use it, but we know at the end of the day that that the benefit of all this data collection is going to be very, very minimal. All right, so even for people that change their behavior at the beginning, going back to their old behaviors, that, whether it's for water, whether it's for energy. I think the few cases worked was why, for example, maybe energy consumption in some places in developing countries. But generally speaking, most of these efforts have failed. And I'm wondering, for the cases that have worked well, and that question may relate to some of these issues, like maybe John does raise personality type, who are the people involved, what kinds of agents are there. But I'm just wondering whether you have some information or data on what could really make that difference. It's apparent that it's not about the quantification. It's more really about the other soft issue, behavioral change strategies. It's really not about how much data you collect. And again, there's actually another issue with that, which is the organizational capacity to actually make use of such data. All right, so we don't even want to touch that because from an e-government perspective, as an e-government person as well, that's one aspect of organizational sciences generally. That's going to be another issue that we have to cope with.
So that's a really good question, because in behaviour change science we talk about two distinct processes, which is the initiation of behaviour change and the maintenance of behaviour change, and the mechanisms by which they happen are very different. There's lots of really good literature on that by Boyega. So I suppose if you are trying to look at sustained behaviour change, And the initiation is often the really challenging bit. People are stuck in their habits, so getting that first change is the first step. And it's not surprising that people dropped off now. There's probably more complex reasons. So what are the strategies then? So if you can get people to 4 or 6 weeks, you may start the creation of habit. And habit is one of the really useful ways that you can get sustained behaviour change. But the next thing is that the original motivations for the change will not be enough to sustain the behaviour. Take health and fitness as an example. You start because you want to lose a few pounds. That's a fairly predictable one. After 4 or 5, 6 weeks, maybe you've lost them. You think, God, that's that done now, and that's enough. Or what happens is you think, oh, I'm quite enjoying this. So now your motivators are entirely different. So if you've got a system that needs to recognise that there's been a shift and a change. And so we're doing a project at the moment with CRE, and it's to do with personalising the goals. But we'll have that critical point of intervention where we come along, and the goals weekly are set on the performance of the week before, not just on this thing that's an end point that leaves you falling off a cliff as the end. So again, it boils down to what you're trying to do, what the behaviour is, how difficult it is for somebody, what features of an intervention will help them, prompts, reminders, or will they annoy them? And can you then change the game so that there's a new, innovative, interesting way for them to continue to engage? And that's where the psychologists come in.
I think I can address
Do you want to come in now?
that. The reason being that I think what you're nudging at, you're coming at this from the kind of governance perspective, I think, in a way.
There's an aspect as well, which is
Absolutely.
the capacity to use of this. Because that's taken for granted here, but in reality it's not. I mean, it's real.
Yeah, what I think you're addressing is very much this question, and it's an important one, to do with why data is being collected. I mean, governments are asking these kinds of questions, or are they? Why? This is the point. And then workplaces as well. So just as an example with the kind of snooper starter. So all sorts of data is being collected. And critics are saying, okay, so what is it for? And I think the reasons are there, the rationale is there. But I think as citizens, we start to feel a little bit tense about the kind of collection, smart cities, these kinds of things. And what needs to happen, what needs to be in place is the kind of rationale as a put forward in a very transparent way right toward the beginning. And this also applies in terms of a workplace. So the processes for how these types of projects are rolled out is extremely important. Because again, I think it has implications for governance structure. So what I presented here with just sort of the dark side, the potentials, which is kind of what I'm known for in my research, is to say, like, this is a moment in time where we've got to think these things through. But I think there has to be that dialogue, and there has to be that. Okay, so Mark Stewart did quite an interesting paper. He's based at Leeds, if you're interested in the kind of workplace side, to say, okay, so data that's being collected, actually with a team here with this one, the data that's being collected, the kind of the people analytics, the kind of algorithmic stuff, the research found that in fact employers often don't know what could be done with the data, or even why sometimes. So I think it's extremely important, but the technology exists. So are we being driven by that? So there's this determinist kind of question, is the technology telling us that we have to do this for some reason? So yeah, as you'll know, yeah.
Okay, there are a few more questions. So, so I think, yeah, you were next, and then John.
Yeah, I guess this is more related to the second talk. And I guess for clarity, I've been kind of thinking about it recently in relation to kind of dynamic resource allocation, which I guess comes from the way computers allocate resources. And I suppose, like, measurement of workers, I kind of previously seen as a way of determining, say, their properties with respect to their productivity as a way of allocating them. But I guess I was wondering, do you see kind of what you're talking about more as a way of kind of generating workers in a particular form, like a form of kind of governmentality to kind of mold them in a particular shape, or yeah, I suppose that really.
Did you start your question with precarity?
Yeah.
Did you? Okay, could you say a little bit more about why you mentioned that?
Yeah, I guess I related to the way in which computers kind of dynamically allocate resources. I think
so that could be quite positive to kind of get away from the precarious kind.
Well, I think kind of many labour structures are now dynamically resourcing workers. So
yeah.
You mentioned platforms like
right up. Okay.
Yeah, so they're basically kind of a representation of what skills they can provide or what skills they're kind of rated on. So I see you kind of link between that, but just when you were talking about the kind of harnessing the effective content, I thought, and the kind of the all of life aspect of it, I kind of thought it seemed to tend towards maybe the creative workers as opposed, like the creative idealized workers as opposed to like the finding of idealized workers.
No, that's a good question, and I mean, my research actually, 2011, there's a paper, Fiber Culture, where it's a peer-to-peer production, and this, I was quite excited about the possibilities for how collaborative working spaces and virtual, they can facilitate new, kind of form of democracy, post-democracy, but in a very positive, like we're going to take back control, and actually we've got the means and mode of production, all these kinds of things. So as my research has gone forward, and as I've watched what's going to happen with that movement, I'm back to the point now, I was talking about this yesterday with John as well, is that the research has taken me to the point where I'm saying, okay, while that is the case, what we have to look at are the things that are obscured. So in the context of Mechanical Turk, for example, and this is part of the ILO paper, where I've done it's quite relatively comprehensive in terms of its technology at work, and this is actually feeding into discussions around, it's not going to sound intuitive what I'm about to say, but a labor convention on violence. Symbolic violence, having to do with the new pressures that are being put on workers because of, in the context of the kind of new technological innovations and possibilities. So this Uberization, the kind of the platform stuff, whereby you have so when they started, and I'll just do this very quickly, but when these kind of platforms were originally set up, people who were using them were kind of doing it on the side and saying, oh, this is fun, this is the creative sort of bit of my work that I like doing. Anyway, I'll make a bit of money out of it. So what you're finding is companies are using them, for example, to outsource and to kind of gain work from other areas of the world where in fact there's no kind of control over sort of work regulation, sort of what's available for workers in those places. So there are ethical questions, I think, and those are the things that I target in my research, is to say, so those might be great for the young white male worker, and frankly those are the ones using them predominantly in a sense, but then when you start to say, well actually they're being used by a lot of people who this is their main source of income, this is happening where it's hard to ask those ethical questions because the kind of interface doesn't allow that relationship to emerge between the client and the worker, and also what does this mean for people who don't actually have the time, because of the all of life question, to generate their profile and their reputation based on taking all of the work that is thrown at them? Do you see what I mean? Because of carrying responsibilities and these kinds of things. So I'm not sure that exactly answers your question, but let me know and I will get back to you. Yeah? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think...
Yes.
Okay, John?
Okay, I'm John Morrison, I'm a lawyer. Two great presentations, thank you very much. Some really challenging questions there. I was very impressed by them. Just a point that I always think about when I'm thinking about new technology, and I love new technology like everybody else, I have a big gadget, it's great. But I often sort of wonder, what's different about it from old technology? In part that's because as a lawyer, one of the questions we always ask is the legal framework sufficient to deal with new applications? Is law designed for the hired horse, suitable for driverless cars or algorithmic trading or whatever? It seems to me that thinking about the health apps, I was sort of struck by, it sort of reminded me a little bit of Victorian quackery. All these potions that were given.
The word Mechanical Turks, exactly.
Yeah, all that stuff,
yeah.
cycling clubs and sunshine and all that fresh air, all that kind of stuff. It seemed different to me, so I wonder what's new about, like an Occam's razor thing, what's actually new here? And when you talk a little bit about the economy of health apps, I thought that's probably what's new. I think maybe you alighted it a little bit in the presentation, you said, well, they cost a few euros and so forth. Of course they don't. I mean, the reason why people download health apps is because they're fun and so forth, but the reason why producers produce them and platforms offer them is because of the data, which is taken from them. Of course it is. It's all the permissions which you just tick without even thinking, which can be, as we know, geographical or simply, or the sort of permissions you need to make the thing work, that's fine, but also the permissions that give your data away.
Yeah.
And especially in the health world, that's particularly sinister, is it not?
Yeah.
And I'm sort of wondering, to sort of think about apps as, from a government perspective, doing no harm, doing no physical harm, but there's a wider perspective where they're doing arguably huge harm to you as an individual because you're being abstracted and taken away. It seems to be different. And then in terms of Phoebe's presentation, which I enjoyed as well, I sort of I was really taken by the idea that all these sort of hectic type things that are being produced. One of the goals, it seems to me, of development and technology is to do away with the interface. Not to do away with the gadgets, we'll still be buying lots of gadgets, but to make them seamless so we just appear to interact with the world. Which suggests that in a way, I just wonder how that reflects upon your sort of categories of work and so forth. If you're reacting with the digital world in a seamless way, it appears no different from the natural world, which is the aim of technology, arguably. Will there be such a thing as work, or will it be, or will sort of that digital world as experienced by us, where we work all the time? And I was answering a PhD query at 11 o'clock last night, and came back, and I came back again, and so forth. Our sort of work is seamless. Will there be another definition of work where there's this sort of precariat work, where you do your work and then you have your life, or will there just be one life?
All of life, that's the name of the paper.
Well done.
Very good
You
question.
go.
You go first, move.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of sold a pig in a poke with the flexibility thing, aren't we? Oh, flexible means we work, at late at night, as we all have every night this week, in my case, unfortunately. But the other side is maybe I'm creating heat maps in the middle of the day up there in Dangan. So they talk about work-life balance, and you're right, the world of work has changed incredibly. And the way that we engage in physical activity, you can argue, has changed, even though the fresh air thing, there's gyms and there's other ways of doing it now, standing desks and standing meetings, and so the innovations and the new ideas are nice, but the efficacy and the balance is something that we as ordinary people really struggle with. You could argue that self-monitoring would help you keep some track of that, but as you say, you don't even realise you're working when you're doing your emails at night, unless you have a controlled way of switching things off and so on. Is it a good or a bad thing? It's hard to tell, but early indicators are that it's not really very good for your mental health unless you can hit a balance that works. And again, there are individual differences. So the flexibility can work, but it's like the Visa card. If you don't pay it on time, you have to be an active agent in that balance. And not everyone is very capable or resourceful enough to manage that themselves. And that's where the problem area can be.
Yeah, perfect question. I think where I come at this type of issue has to do with, and it very much is linked with capturing use value and what is labor power, and how can that be kind of profitable for a company. So if you think in terms of material supposed work and then the kind of immaterial work, we're supposed to be in this kind of great post sort of liberated world where if you don't know what the product is, then the product might be you. That's the kind of scenario we're talking about, right? So those are the questions that you're putting forward. And I like to think that these new forms are, again, ways of trying to kind of capture it in a way that is invisible in a way. So like what you're saying in terms of our sort of seamless, mediated sort of way, here we are in this kind of digitalized world, and what does it matter that I'm kind of producing, in fact, in ways that aren't necessarily, we're not using swipe cards. So it might relate to the kind of work. So what I say in the last paper is from art houses to warehouses, these kinds of tracking technologies are being introduced. So there's a kind of a class dimension too. So while factory work was tracked, and has been for a long time, now it's the kind of minutia. It's kind of got to the point where, so in the olden days, the boss would watch and they noticed if you went to the toilet too many times. Now it's actually recorded on your Motorola armband, and if you take too long and you're away from your work stand, these kinds of things, you can be zapped or disciplined, or questions can go to your management, so these kinds of things. But then when it moves into professional working places, linked with well-being and wellness, that's when I start to think, okay, so it's already been demonstrated that too much work causes stress and kind of drop out. And in fact, what I said in the paper, the one that I'm kind of really working on here, is affective and emotional, that I'm making this link that affective tracking, are we saying then that this is a way of preventing resistance to this kind of overwork that you're pointing out? Because I think people know when they feel stressed. They might not know they've overworked, but they know that they feel stressed, or they actually have to go to the doctor because they're unable to sleep, and it's the kind of physical expression of stress, these types of things that start to happen. Maybe you're not directly linking it to overwork, and maybe you're actually having a great time, but it's those types of things. So the measurement of the type of affective labor and the kind of resistance that could come about as a result of many, many people feeling too pressured. And I think we've kind of seen that already happening. And then in terms of emotional labor, this is that Hochschild introduced the idea in the 1980s that we're sort of, the idea is that we're suppressing a lot of, in some ways, something because we're not able even to find time to experience, let's say, qualitative life, because we're so busy working so hard and thinking that it's all fun and games that in fact our bodies start to tell us. So it's the kind of stuff that is required in order to manage ourselves in the context of the supposedly liberated, but in fact very tense, constantly fluid, transforming workplace, as it were. Yeah.
So bad is the answer.
There's some Silicon Valley company, I remember reading this months ago, can't remember the name or any of the details, so could turn out to be entirely fabricated, but they will give employees a bonus if they can demonstrate that they've got 8 hours sleep a night.
Oh, nice.
It's like a huge interest in sleep and the
and
value of sleep.
You'll know France has introduced the Comrie law where it's illegal to sort of do...
I was going to mention that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. In fact, I'll give you the ILO paper because my trade union colleague who I've written it with has done a quite nice section of the paper that looks at trade union responses and the kinds of regulation that started to emerge that sort of has happened. Maybe what we're arguing comes about as a result of sort of, civil society and people sort of saying, look, let's try and negotiate this process. Yeah, but I'm sure you're going to tell us all about this in your talk. So that's, actually we're looking forward to it. Absolutely.
Quick, one more question. Anyone want to come in on a question?
I was just going to ask about ethics. As Jane said, I look into sort of social media and the effects of social media. And at the back of social media companies, there's very little ethical oversight. There have been papers written, people asking for a new branch of ethics, techno-ethics. And like with, say, the 100,000 apps and devices that people monitor their health with, and with people, employers monitoring employees, like where do you stand on some sort of an ethical oversight? Are we doing the right thing? Is monitoring health good? Other than psychologically, like from an ethical standpoint, or monitoring people's labour, emotional, unseen, invisible, or actual, is that ethical? Where would you stand on that?
I'll just make one provocative statement, is that okay?
Yeah.
My provocative statement is as follows. From my research, consumers have more rights than workers, but we don't really know what they are. Meanwhile, our data is being sold and profiting companies. Yeah, so which is probably what you're about to say.
Well, the EU is developing guidelines, and they have a think tank now around the apps. So May 2016 they met and they've developed a set of guidelines which embeds ethics, but it's really to do with app development. It explicitly includes behaviour change strategies, which is why the engineers are banging down our doors in psychology, which is great. But we had an NUI Galway ethics meeting yesterday, and we had quite a few app and social media projects come past our desk, and there was a lot of head scratching as to where do we go for the state-of-the-art guidelines on this. It's a difficult area. So as Boyega knows, there's the data security and privacy issues, but the impact on the individual user is underexplored, and we're doing our bits of work. You are, we are, but there isn't an oversight on that yet, so it's a bit of a grey area. So say, it's humorous, but in the university ethics yesterday, we took a very stringent line on these things and went right down into it, and not one of us had an answer. It's probably more stringent than what's happening in the outside world.
This is the concern, like in the university, there'd be an ethics board, and you go through all of this work, where there's 30 guys in Silicon Valley developing apps that affect billions of people, and nobody's watching.
No, it's because the private sector has stolen a march, and every other clunky system we have is light years behind. So we're playing catch up, and I think we'll continue to. But the EU are doing pretty good work in trying to provide foundational guidelines. They have ethical principles and so on, but they haven't really filtered through yet. So, very good question.
So they're a bit behind.
Okay, I think we'll draw this to a close, and we'll reconvene at just after 12, let's say. So 15
Thank
minutes.
you.